Hey everyone, and welcome back to Season 2 of Above the Tree Line. I am Lauren Thurston, your host, and today I am joined by a special guest, Pastor Chris Tapken.
Lauren, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here today. You are going to make us all wiser. You are a very holy, righteous...
Aim higher.
Holy, righteous man. Okay, so just a little background for people who don't know you. Yeah. You are the prayer pastor here at Austin Christian Fellowship.
Yes.
Meaning you do what?
I lead our prayer ministry.
You pray a lot.
We pray. Well, we have to pray in these times. We have a prayer barn on our campus, a place that we pray every day. So just an amazing group of people. Great church, fun ministry. Yeah. We pray. That's the job.
We pray.
That's it.
All right. So
for you too, a lot.
Pray for me a lot. Yeah. I need it. So you went to seminary?
No.
Oh, okay. No. Well, either way, you're a pastor, so you'll be able to weigh in on some of this. I'm going to be quoting some verses from Ephesians today.
Do it.
And I know you'll be familiar with that.
Okay.
Okay. So this question came from a conversation in a small group of Christians at ACF regarding the topic of cussing or swearing, cursing. I know we're going to dive into how those things are different, but there are a lot of Christians, even pastors included, like some that have been dubbed the cussing pastor.
Yeah. And
the question has come up, so is it a sin when you say a curse word, swear word? And we're not going to jump right into the answer yet, but I do want to point out that in the last, definitely in your lifetime, there's been an increased use of foul language. It seems to become more commonplace, especially in today's culture. Culture changes all the time, and you're seeing people dress differently, talk differently, tattoos, piercing, more women cussing than before. And so I guess the first question is it appropriate for our language to evolve as culture evolves?
The bigger question to your sub-question is, why is this happening? What in our lifetime? Why is this happening? Why are we experience? Why is it more normal? And I got a theory on it.
Okay.
I think it's because we're drifting as a culture and a society more away from God and the biblical principles that were more, as we were growing up, those were more quote unquote normal. And I think as our culture is fading from that, we're seeing more increases of things like language.
Yeah.
That, again, growing up in school, we'd never heard of that. Today, kind of normal,
right.
Sadly. So
right.
I think that's the bigger thing is the why. The why is I think we're moving away from God and his principles. Now,
right.
There's some that think, me included, revival's coming where we go back and even more towards.
But do you think something as minute as the words that we use could be a prevention for revival coming our way?
I think words have power.
Okay.
I think words matter. I think language matters. And I think there's also this tendency where we justify things. We make things more normal that we want to make normal so we can justify, is it really that big a deal? Everyone's doing it. And we can fall into that, what I think is a trap of culture. Then we switch from using God's definitions and God's ways to world's definitions and worldly ways. And I think that, Lauren, that's dangerous.
Okay. So I have a couple of verses from Ephesians I want to use here. So Ephesians 4:29, Paul says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for the building up of others, as fits the occasion, that it may impart grace to the hearers." Okay, so this corrupting talk that he's talking about here, I don't gather that he's talking about like certain four-letter words. I think he's talking about words that will cut down other people. And those don't even have to be cuss words or swear words. They can just be cursing somebody else. Like even something as simple as shame on you.
Yeah.
That has power, putting shame on someone else. So I guess my first question that I wrestle with is there's certain curse words that have to do with like damning people. Right. But then do those have the same amount of power as if you stub your toe and you say a 4-letter word? Does that 4-letter word that you say have the same power as cursing someone with something as simple as shame on you?
Yeah. That verse that you read, who's Paul writing to?
Ephesus.
He's writing to the church.
Yeah.
It's not the culture. He's writing to
the church of Ephesus.
Yeah. To the Christians. Uh-huh. That's the audience. That's number one. But I do think, to your point, the heart matters. I think there's a difference between cussing and cursing. Cursing is really speaking from a heart, from the heart posture, from a heart. How about this word? Motive. Mm-hmm. What's the motive? From a heart motive, cursing is really speaking down on someone and speaking negative, even speaking evil into them.
Right.
So heart matters, as opposed to your example of stubbing your toe and a word comes out.
Right.
Is that really the heart posture of evil? Probably not. Appropriate? According to Paul,
all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial, right?
Yeah. And I'd love to say, first of all, disclaimer, I'd love to say I'm batting 1,000% on this.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
No.
I'm not batting 1,000% even today,
well,
which is why I have all these questions.
Because you're the one that wrote the question.
I didn't write the question.
Okay,
the question was presented to me because I'm not a foul-mouthed person. Like I grew up in a household where the word, like we couldn't say the word sucks. We couldn't say the word crap. And I'm sorry, I hope these aren't offensive to anybody, but we couldn't say those words.
Right.
And especially because I was a lady, that's, but sometimes, I've said this on the podcast before, like sometimes I'll be praying to God and I'll be like, God, this really sucks. Yeah. And the generation before me is like, you don't talk to God that way. But I'm like, that's how I feel about this. I'm not cursing God. I'm telling you, this is how I feel about this situation. Like, when we approach God in prayer, do we need to like clean up our mouths and our acts?
Well, holiness matters to God. Mm-hmm. Morality matters to God. It's a big deal. That being said, he's also a God that authenticity matters too. So again, I think, Lauren, because we can get stuck in a lot of this in the weeds too.
Yeah, but I like being in the weeds.
I get it. You do. But heart matters. Motive matters. The holiness, those sorts of things matter. And I think Paul was urging the church, let's not get stuck in the minors, but like big picture, like watch your words. Mm-hmm. Like don't let unwholesome words come out. Don't let that get in the way of your witness. Mm-hmm. Which I think is important.
Because potentially, like we have, when there are pastors that are the cussing pastors and they cuss during their sermons, a lot of people are like, oh, he's so normal. I'm drawn to that. It's relatable. But is that pastor taking a step down, like closer to culture instead of calling people up towards heaven?
All great questions. And I'd love to have the 100% answer, but all great questions. Now, can we just chase a 30-second rabbit really quick? When you talk about other pastors, in the power of words and motive, let's tie this all in. I think it's really dangerous for specifically pastors in other churches to judge other pastors in other churches. I think that's really
totally.
So when you say, is that cussing pastor? Is he right or wrong? I don't go down there a lot because I think it's dangerous.
Well, and it also
slippery slope.
works for his congregation. Like there's a million different types of churches out there, and they each have a very different audience based on
Yeah,
who pastors the church.
We're all going to stand before God and give an account. So I lean towards strongly that I don't know that cussing and swearing is helpful.
Right. But the question is, of course it's not helpful, but is it sinful?
I'm going to land on yes.
All the time.
That's where I'm going to land.
Okay. So here's my next question, because
I asked for forgiveness for me and you a lot.
Okay. So my other question is there's like, there's substitutes. There's clean substitutes for cuss words.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to say the D word, you might say darn.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want to say the SH word, you might say shoot.
Yeah.
Are those equal in, I don't know, sinfulness?
Well, I think there's like this level of offensiveness in culture. And you have some on let's go the way right side would be like, we all know that's like offensive.
Yeah.
And then some are variations of that are less offensive to culture. Again, you can get in the weeds crazy on this. Should I say this? Should I not? I go back to heart. Heart posture, motive. And if you're thinking about it, like, just don't do it.
Okay, but is there a difference between thinking about it and saying it? If you're thinking that word, is that sin as equal as you actually saying that word? See, this is how my mind works. I just want to know the level of offense.
You have a complicated mind.
I do.
You have a really complicated mind. Let's get you free from that. These are all really tricky questions. But let's go back to the majors.
Okay.
Instead of the minors.
God, I love the minors though. Okay.
But it's a huge deal. Not only in this, but you can go into your theology on so much stuff, and you miss the major stuff. Major. I keep going back to that. What's the major? Jesus. Eyes on Jesus, and let's work out our theology and let the minors be minors and majors be majors. But within that, is where is our heart at with this? Are we a person, a Christian that needs to clean up our language because it's affecting our witness? It's just not right.
Could it potentially be drawing people closer to you, though? Maybe they think you're more approachable because you seem normal, quote unquote.
I think more than that is holiness. I think people that live holy lives are the most attractive people on the planet.
To some, because to other people, that can be really intimidating. Like, it's because you can get into the, like, they're so holy, I'm so shameful, I'm not going to associate with that person.
Yeah. No, I get that part too. They're at a different level, so to speak, so I can't even approach them.
Yeah. Or that's weird.
Yeah. Well, some of it can be weird.
Yeah.
All with the real, there's always the counterfeit too, and that's from the enemy is the counterfeit version. So with holiness, there's going to be a counterfeit version to that too, which not good either.
Like self-righteousness, holier than thou.
All that.
Yeah.
Unapproachable. Jesus was the most approachable person on the planet. He was the most attractive person on the planet.
But also the most hated.
True. But he didn't repulse people. He attracted people to him. And I think he used great language.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. So another verse from Ephesians that stood out to me was Ephesians 5:4. Paul says, "Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving." So now we're not just talking about unwholesome talk.
Yeah.
We're also throwing in jokes, crude jokes. And sometimes crude jokes are funny. But it's like, there's always that there. I mean, I guess if your conscience feels any sort of nudge, you're like, I probably shouldn't tell this joke.
Yes.
that's probably a sign that you shouldn't be telling that joke, right?
Is there a line? Probably. Where is it? No clue.
Right.
But to your point, if I'm getting pinged, let's just stay away from
Right.
the line. Let's not try to figure out how close to the line can we get with our words on is that sin or not. Let's just not go there.
Yeah.
And we'll all be better off, I think, because of it. Because, again, big picture, words have power.
Talk about that. What do you
Language
mean
has
words
power.
have power? Like,
Go back to the Ephesians 4. I love to say this, Lauren. I want my words to call the gold out of people.
mm-hmm.
I think every single person has gold in them.
Yeah.
Call that out of them. Instead, and so much in our culture, we have so much negativity with language, with rhetoric. Hello, just turn on Fox News or CNN for 3 minutes. And it's so divisive, and that's become normalized, so negative. And those words have power. But what about the other side of that? What about calling the gold out of people? What about calling people up with our language, with our words? What would that do in the church? I think that's what Paul was encouraging the church. Through your words, edify, encourage.
Yeah.
The one you just read, thanksgiving, words of gratitude. I think all those do so much good in the church. And honestly, we don't see much of that.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Like, you're awesome. You're amazing. You're the best.
Wait, are you saying that to me? Or are you saying that's what we should say?
You're the best podcaster I've ever seen. You're the best communication director. Call the gold out of people. And it goes so far. Especially, I think our next generation really needs that.
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation, words of encouragement. They hear enough cussing in their normal. Let's be different for them. Let's be different for this next generation where, especially in the church and in Christian circles, it's going to be normal when they hear words of encouragement. What would that do to the next generation?
Well, that's another interesting thing you think about. Like, it's if there's a word you don't want to hear your child say, it's probably a word that you shouldn't also be saying, right?
Probably pretty good advice.
Yeah. Because it almost seems like it's like, well, you're not old enough to, you're not old enough to vote. You're not old enough to smoke. You're not old enough to drink, blah, blah, blah. But at what point are you old enough to cuss? Like,
Yeah.
And those are not words I want to hear come out of my child's mouth.
Yeah.
But I think that's why my mom shakes her finger at me when I let some of those things slip. But what about, I did receive this question.
Okay.
Are you allowed to use that strong cussing language when you are denouncing evil?
Give me an example.
If you are like, is it okay for Christ followers to curse the devil?
I think you can get the same thing accomplished without cursing.
Okay. So if you're telling him what you think of him and where he should go, are you allowed to say that with like hateful language?
We're in a whole different area now. I don't talk to the enemy a lot.
Okay.
I talk to Jesus more. Now, I have renounced through prayer, and this is part of our healing ministry, part of our deliverance, part of freedom that we want all people. So yeah, we cast out the things of the enemy, but I don't speak to the enemy a lot directly. I speak to Jesus. And I tell him what to do. Here's what I'm asking you to do, because he has the power and authority.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that like God spoke things into existence?
Yeah.
Right. So speaking is very clearly like a powerful tool of God's. Do you think our words have that kind of power as Christ followers?
Totally. Language creates culture. Words create culture. That's why we're seeing a bit of negativity in our land today. Why? Words have become so negative.
Yeah.
That
Well, I've even heard like when we're talking about like mental health, like I've been very open about like my obsessive compulsive disorder, but there's a lot of times when I'll be like, oh man, my OCD today. And there will be people who are like, don't say my OCD. Don't let your words take ownership of that. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know if there's anything to that or not. I don't know if my words have that much power, but do you have any opinions about claiming ownership of those things?
Heart. What's your motive? Do I believe when you say OCD that's going to overtake you? No. Do I want you thinking about it all the time, harboring in it, obsessing about the obsessiveness? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So take authority, use your words as Christians, use the authority God given us, pray that stuff out, and then we move on with life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's go back to the big picture. Words matter.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity, I think, Lauren, right now in church world to change culture. And words are going to be a big part of that. I really believe that. Words that encourage, words that build up, words that speak positive.
Edify.
And let's not fall as a church for the trap of let's fit into culture.
Right.
We can do better.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you. You had more to say about this than I thought you were. And you followed me on my rabbit trails. But we are officially out of time now.
Good.
Fascinating topic.
Yeah.
I love what you brought to the table. So thank you for speaking some truth into this. Appreciate it. And I want to thank you guys, our Above the Tree Line listeners and watchers. Yeah, subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't already, you can subscribe on YouTube or Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening to it. And guys, please continue to send us your questions. This podcast exists because of your questions. Submit those at www.acfellowship.org/podcast. And we will answer another one of your questions next week. Thanks, guys.